The Servant Leader by James A. Autry is an excellent blend of the theoretical concepts of the servant leadership philosophy with practical application to situations that most managers will encounter. James A. Autry was the president of the magazine group for Meredith Corporation and responsible for such publications as Better Homes and Gardens and Ladies' Home Journal. Today's presentation is brought to you by Christopher Bile, Andrew Cardillo, Taylor Duncan, David Lavavi, and Christina Ward. Autry's work consists of 5 main themes. The first theme is the 5 ways of being. The second theme is the 3 aspects of vision. The third theme is the myths of loyalty. The fourth theme is the myths of technology. And the fifth theme is some advice on preventing, resolving, and managing conflict. Of the ways of being, the first is to be authentic. To be authentic, you must be your genuine self by maintaining your values regardless of your position or the situation. Human society insists that we not be genuine, and we often hold back our true thoughts and beliefs in order to satisfy some invisible force. According to Autry, being authentic is, first, knowing yourself, then being yourself. Authenticity derives from our deepest, truest selves. How do we come to know ourselves? Only through what can be called spiritual disciplines: silence, meditation, and prayer. The author, James A. Autry, described a situation where he experienced a strong disagreement with a vice president who supervised his group. Once he received a better job offer in the same industry, he attempted to resign. The company's CEO requested that Autry postpone his resignation until the CEO was able to meet with him. But at the same time, his new employer was ready to welcome him. Autry struggled with his decision, but he did agree to meet with the CEO, and once he did, Autry handed him his resignation letter. After the CEO read it, he apologized and stated, "I've been such a jerk, and I'm sorry. I knew this was a big problem, and I hoped it would go away. I should have known better. I should have known that the structure I set up did not free you to do the creative job I expected. I'm sorry. I'll change it. I need you here to help carry out the vision. Please stay." In the end, Autry remained with the company. He had always thought of the CEO as a genuine person and admired him. And based on this interaction, Autry was able to determine the CEO was indeed genuine, as he was able to admit his weaknesses and put his ego aside when the situation warranted it. The second way of being is to be vulnerable. To be vulnerable, you have to be honest with how you feel about your job and be willing to look closely at your feelings about different concepts and the abilities of others. Admitting your mistakes with candor and openness takes strength and willpower. The ability to relinquish control is important because those who are in control of a given situation are only there temporarily. According to Autry, too many of us think that our power comes from our ability to maintain control. To the contrary, our power comes from realizing that we can't be in control and we must depend on others. Autry describes that during the agricultural crisis of the 1980s, the author's company magazine sponsored a conference that invited farmers nationwide to attend. Some of the benefits that were provided to attendees included discounted food, lodging, and ground transportation. The company's CEO became very emotional when he learned how impressed his constituents were with how the company was trying to make a difference in the lives of the struggling farmers. Despite how it may have looked to him at the time, his moment of candor and emotion received more warmth and appreciation than he probably ever assumed. As Autry tells us, basically, being vulnerable means being honest with your feelings in the context of your work, being open with your doubts and fears and the concerns about an idea, an employee's performance or your own performance, and being able to admit mistakes openly, particularly with your employees. Simply saying, "I was wrong," and meaning it, embracing it, is an expression of vulnerability, and I believe is a sign of being spiritually attuned and aware. The third way of being is to be accepting. Autry describes being accepting as the art of acceptance does not imply that you accept everyone's ideas without critical analysis, discussion, and judgment. only that you accept the ideas as valid for discussion and review, and that you focus on the ideas themselves, not on the person who presented them. It also means that you accept and embrace disagreement as a human part of the process of work. All of us are in need of acceptance, both in our personal as well as our professional lives. Being accepting means being willing to focus on understanding the various personalities with whom we interact. In the workforce, acceptance is crucial, as employees tend to disagree primarily with the personalities of their counterparts, less so than the quality of the work they actually perform. As companies have shifted their focus to that of teamwork, they've begun to realize that some of the team groupings are destined to fail because of unrealistic expectations. Sometimes these include the development of a disagreement based on a perceived lack of cohesiveness, and the feeling that one must win all arguments all of the time. Genuine people will be accepting of others without the innate prejudice that may compel them to put others down in order to lift themselves up. The fourth way of being is to be present. Autry talks about this by saying, "This can be a difficult task because of the pressure of the past and the future. We're always trying to learn from the past, and if we're fulfilling our full management role, we're always planning for the future. So being attuned to all your management responsibilities while living in the present and focusing on the here and now sometimes seems impossible. It often seems counterintuitive as well. Being available to yourself and to others all the time is critical to how others will see you. Because people are always looking towards the future while considering the past at the same time, being present at all times is often easier said than done. This is even more challenging in a workplace environment where multitasking often gets in the way of the ability to be present. Being graceful under pressure is a strong managerial quality, as the ability to remain calm during crisis can lead others to view you as a competent, confident leader. The fifth way of being is to be useful. On being useful, Autry says, one of the primary functions of the manager/leader is to ensure that people get the resources they need to do the job. To be a leader who serves, you must think of yourself as, and indeed must be, their principal resource. And that goes to the very heart of this book, service. The most important thing you can do, or you can be as a leader, is useful. Being a resource to those around you is one of the most important parts of being a leader. Being useful causes those around you to have faith in your abilities and thus give you the power to guide them. The sign of a strong leader is someone who has power and authority, but does not need to use it for frivolous purposes or as a tool for workplace intimidation. The second theme of Autry's book involves the three aspects of vision. To understand the three aspects of vision, we first need to understand some of the problems with mission and vision statements in general. The terms mission and vision are not, when used in a business context, very well defined, and they have many differing interpretations. This often renders them meaningless to employees and organizations. Many organizations are more likely to formulate vision statements at a senior leadership level and push the final product down to employees than out to the public. They're also very apt to enlist third parties to generate vision statements. Unfortunately, neither of these approaches often involves any employee input. And without employee input, the vision statements created are very unlikely to relate well to the actual reality of the employees' lives and jobs. And this unfortunately renders the vision statement irrelevant to these employees. Autry articulates a strategy for developing a meaningful vision statement composed of three aspects. The first aspect is to define purpose, and purpose must inspire employees about the organization as well as their stake in it. The second aspect is to define the mission of the organization, to clearly explain what the organization does and why they do it. The third aspect of vision is to articulate the values and cultures of the organization. These concepts can also be used to define a personal vision statement. To explore the three aspects of vision, let's examine a vision statement of sorts from the George R. Martin popular novel Game of Thrones, which serves as the source material for the popular HBO series. The Night's Watch is an organization in Martin's novel that has members recite the following oath. Night gathers, and now my watch begins. It shall not end until my death. I shall take no wife, hold no lands, father no children. I shall wear no crowns and win no glory. I shall live and die at my post. I am the sword in the darkness. I am the watcher on the walls. I am the shield that guards the realms of men. I pledge my life and honor to the Night's Watch, for this night and all nights to come. As we explore the three aspects of vision, perhaps we'll learn something about the Night's Watch based on their vision statement. The first aspect of vision is purpose. To define its purpose, an organization must answer a very basic question. Why are we here? A clear, well-defined purpose will help guide employees to find meaning in their job, regardless of their role, and to align their personal purpose with the organizational purpose, hopefully creating strong employee engagement. An organization's purpose may evolve over time, but it should not change significantly or rapidly. If it does, this is often an indicator of organizational dysfunction. For a personal vision, you must make sure to articulate the reason for your existence in this world, in this profession, or in your job. If we examine the Night's Watch oath, I think we can clearly find the purpose when they say, I am the shield that guards the realms of men. The purpose of the Night's Watch is to guard the realms of men. The second aspect of vision is mission. To define mission, an organization must answer the question, what do we do in order to fulfill our purpose? In defining the mission, it is important not to confuse measurements of success, such as financial indicators like profit, with the actual mission. For example, Kentucky Fried Chicken can, and likely should, make a profit, selling delicious comfort food to customers. But make no mistake, it is providing that delicious comfort food that is the mission, not the generation of profit. The generation of profit is but an indicator of success or lack thereof. Often, organizations that over-diversify are those that have lost sight of their mission. For example, if Kentucky Fried Chicken was to also open credit unions with Colonel Sanders' face on the sign, it may or may not generate profit, but it is certainly not part of the mission of providing delicious comfort food to consumers. A mission can and likely will change, as the environment changes while the purpose holds constant. Digging back into the Night's Watch oath for a mission, I think we can clearly find one when they say, I am the sword in the darkness. I am the watcher on the walls. Clearly, the Night's Watch is an organization of armed men who stand sentinel duty to protect the realms of men. The third aspect of vision is values. Here, an organization must answer the question, what norms and behaviors do we consider important in achieving our mission to fulfill our purpose? Values define the culture of the organization and provide a scaffold to organize employee behavior to achieve long-term organizational success. To build strong, effective culture, management must have input from employees to help align their personal values with organizational values. Major conflicts between organizational culture and employee personal values will inevitably lead to poor employee engagement. Culture can be developed organically with no guidance, but there is a significant risk of organizational dysfunction when this happens. Looking back once more to the Night's Watch oath, I think we can identify their values when they say, I shall take no wife, hold no lands, father no children. I shall wear no crowns and win no glory. I shall live and die at my post. So what we've learned of the Night's Watch and their vision is that they're an organization of armed sentinels who will live a monastic life and place the good of the order above their own personal well-being while guarding the realms of men. I hope this has been helpful in understanding the three aspects of vision. The third theme of Autry's work are the myths of loyalty. Autry talks about, within the concept of servant leadership, the crisis of loyalty. As he eloquently states, it's a conundrum for today's leaders in the workplace. And the conundrum centers on organizations that are driven by the progression of knowledge, information, and service. This in turn makes the organization dependent on people. Younger workers increasingly see themselves as free agents, free to capitalize on this dependency in their quest for fulfilling well-compensated positions, leaving many employers wondering, where's the loyalty to anyone anymore? Autry challenges us to consider if this old paradigm of loyalty is even a true test of loyalty, and in the process critiques three myths leaders associate with loyalty under the old paradigm. The 6 myths leaders associated with loyalty under the old paradigm, according to Autry, are: myth number 1, loyalty should be a condition of employment. Myth number 2, loyalty is only a feeling, thus is difficult to perceive with certainty. Myth number 3, long hours are a sign of loyalty, and the most loyal employees are those who spend the most time at the workplace. Myth number 4, the most loyal people are those who do not make waves but accept policies, procedures, and decisions without question or debate. Myth number 5, the loyal person does not seek or consider job opportunities in other organizations. And myth number 6, loyalty is long-term or not at all, and it can never be episodic. Autry very much wants us to understand that the loyalty of yesteryear is gone, as the behaviors of today have changed to replace it. In today's workplace, the concept that loyalty begets loyalty centers on genuine concern for employees that's demonstrated by organizations that will treat employees as individuals and not as numbers, will respond to special needs, will provide resources, and will act with integrity. Loyalty must be earned and deserved, and while it typically goes up and down, we must understand it can also move laterally as well. Colleagues should be loyal to other colleagues. Departments should be loyal to other departments within the organization. While loyalty once simply meant a long-term commitment to an organization as a condition of employment, organizations must now match behaviors to the new expectations of today's employees. Autry punctuates his thoughts on servant leadership and loyalty by saying that, if you can't say I love you, you're fired, you shouldn't be in management. You can show loyalty even in firing someone by showing grace and being honest. Autry also cautions us that missing the point of these new behavioral traits can cause a distortion of loyalty, and details several instances of distorted loyalty. On page 164, he describes dealing with substandard work. In a time he watched a colleague defend a subordinate's substandard work because the employee was a friend and he thought he was being loyal. By minimizing the responsibility of the assignments, he was violating the trust to the rest of the organization. He was being dishonest and therefore loyal he was not. On page 166, Autry describes a situation where a CEO he was advising was faced with a money-losing department of his organization that he was very hesitant to shut down. The CEO was so focused that the people in this department may lose their jobs that he lost sight of the fact that this department was losing the company money and negatively affecting other parts of the organization. By trying to stay loyal to the one part or department, he was not being loyal to the rest of the organization. He was not being honest to himself or the other workers. On the flip side, Autry also provides us a dramatic example on page 167 of how loyalty should work both ways, and does in this example. It relates back to the same one as before, with the CEO who had to shut down the single department to save the rest of his organization. In this scenario, the laid-off workers, once the decision to lay them off was made, were told directly of the layoff, followed by the rest of the organization. The organization created a program to support the laid-off workers, providing first choice of open positions, assistance by HR with contacting surrounding area companies in an attempt to help find them jobs, and even interest-free loans. While this seemed an expensive thing to do, the positive impact on morale and the remaining employees was noteworthy. Because of this, they knew the company hated laying anyone off and tried their best to help the ones they did. This scenario demonstrates the power of servant leadership applied in practice to generate loyalty by respecting basic human dignity. As a final thought on loyalty, perhaps we should consider that true workplace loyalty simply consists of employees doing their best job without ulterior motives, with employers trusting their employees to do those jobs without micromanagement and without fostering a cogs in the wheel mentality. The fourth theme of Autry's book are the myths of high technology in the workplace. Certainly, technology has benefited the modern workplace. It has made our jobs easier, increased productivity, and connected people across the globe. Some of us can recall, not so fondly perhaps, the days of fax machines, dictaphones, and carbon paper. Indeed, technological advances such as Wi-Fi, video conferencing, color copy machines, and text messaging are welcome advancements. However, technology in and of itself does not guarantee good communication. In fact, it can often be an impediment. When we email someone who is just in the next cubicle rather than going over to have a face-to-face interaction, we lose an important opportunity to enhance a relationship and build community. The servant leader must ensure the appropriate use of technology in the workplace by being mindful that technological advancements are tools. They cannot substitute for good work. In The Servant Leader, Autry details 4 specific myths of high technology in the workplace. The first is that we are now more connected because of technology. The second myth states that electronic tools have made communication faster, better, and more accurate. Myth number 3 is that working in a centralized location is obsolete due to technology. The fourth and final myth states that when people multitask, they get more done. Through the next several slides, we'll look at each of these myths in more detail and Autry's critiques in specific. Myth number 1, that we are more connected because of technology, is something we really need to ask ourselves if it's true or not. There's no question that we're more connected electronically, but Autry contends that we are simultaneously less connected personally. He goes on to state that this is particularly concerning for the servant leader who knows that personal human connection is critical for giving meaning to our work. The servant leader wants to build community and relationships, both within the team and with other internal and external stakeholders. These connections are critical for innovation and for collaborating to advance shared goals. If teams are dispersed across a large geography, leaders must bring the teams together physically in one location regularly to foster these human connections. Myth number 2 is that technology makes communication faster, better, and more accurate. While it's certainly true that technology has sped up the pace of our communication, the reality is that the quality and accuracy of electronic communication can actually decline. Communication is a process that requires active participation and engagement. Email typically cuts down the time people spend together. It's far too easy to send a quick email rather than to take a few minutes to engage someone in person. There simply is no substitute for personal interaction. The important nonverbal cues of this face-to-face communication are often lost in email and text. Myth number 3 tells us that working in a central location is obsolete due to technology. Autry states that the most important role of the servant leader is as a community builder. Any business is ultimately about relationships. While invention and creativity is certainly possible at the individual level, most significant innovation is born of collaboration, when people work together towards shared goals in person. While it is perfectly reasonable to have some employees working from home or in other locations, It is critical that virtual teams are physically brought together regularly to ensure opportunities to build good relationships and a sense of community. Myth number 4 is that when people multitask, they get more done. We have heard all the time that multitasking is a myth, and it's certainly Autry's position in The Servant Leader. He states that servant leaders must create a culture that honors quality, not quantity of work. Being busy does not necessarily equate to real accomplishment. Servant leaders focus on results, not on activity alone. This means encouraging a good work-life balance. Working weekends or checking work emails in the evening is more likely to lead to burnout than to groundbreaking innovation. Ultimately, Autry's point is that technology is neither good nor bad. It's simply neutral. It cannot replace talent or creativity which come from people. The wise servant leader will help their team to use technology appropriately and in moderation to achieve their goals. The fifth theme of Autry's work involves conflict. Autry points out that conflict in the workplace usually results from a difference of personality and style. Conflicts of personality can be difficult as they originate from emotion and perceptions. Constructive disagreement often encourages better ideas, but unresolved conflict is disruptive to the work environment, teamwork, and morale. We must challenge the parties involved in conflict to move past personal differences. To do so, we must take the heat or anger out of a situation and have a civil conversation. If either party is reacting out of anger, the likelihood of finding a tenable solution decreases greatly. Additionally, it can result in the conflict becoming very personal and much harder to resolve. The first goal is to prevent conflict. Secondarily, to resolve it. And if this is not possible, you must move on to managing the conflict so it does not impede your work. Open and honest communication of feelings and concerns is essential. A discussion filled with pleasantries will not produce sustainable, realistic solutions. Autry tells us that our first approach to conflict should be to prevent it. One method of preventing conflict is to incorporate affirmations into organizational routines. For example, you could begin or end every meeting by having each person offer a compliment to every individual in attendance. Another exercise is to utilize the circle of silence, which involves bringing a group together for about 4 hours. For the first 20 minutes, there's mandatory silence. After that, anyone can speak as long as they are feeling led to do so, but they are limited to saying how they feel. Other participants are not allowed to provide advice or respond, only to talk about how they themselves feel. This helps build a community and shows that no matter our differences, we all experience joy, pain, and grief. We are all more similar than dissimilar. In preventing conflict, we should be proactive and not reactive. By bringing people together to discuss differences and disagreements before they reach the point of hostility and conflict. Importantly, Autry wants us to know that nothing substitutes for your own awareness and readiness to respond. When you sense conflict developing between people or groups, intervene quickly with a conversation or a meeting with the parties. If you're unable to prevent conflict in the first place, you must move on to resolving conflict. Autry wants you to make sure to ascertain the nature of the conflict. If not, the proposed solution may not meet the needs of either party involved in the conflict. After you've ascertained the nature, the next step is to identify and fix any organizational problems. You can do something structurally or organizationally to help alleviate the problem, then you should do it. And if you choose to do so, first tell the people involved what you plan to do, explain how it will help, ask for their reaction, and then get their cooperation before you do it. Now, be aware this may not make people happy immediately, but the objective is to correct and end the point of conflict, and then you can address the morale issue afterwards. You must be aware that even if you don't intentionally create competition between workers or departments or sites, if you failed to prevent or resolve conflict, which inevitably you will at some situation, you must move on to managing conflict. The secret to managing conflict, according to Autry, is to make the parties involved in the conflict responsible for a management solution and moving forward by having them prepare a plan that they intend to facilitate productivity and cooperation between them. You must be aware that you can consider organizational solutions such as transferring or physically separating them, or firing one or both of the participants in the conflict, but these are often not the best solutions. Also keep in mind that the expectations of the parties involved in the conflict and how it is or should be handled do not impose any obligation upon you to do it their way. Be aware, however, that as you advocate for yourself and others in conflict, you must do so without becoming the enemy or seeing others as the enemy. This will cause the conflict to become personal unnecessarily, which is very unhelpful to this process. In summary of James Autry's The Servant Leader, we like to leave you with one quote that we think pretty well distills the essence of servant leadership applied practically. Servant leadership requires courage and faith. Courage to face everything that goes with failing or being fired, and faith that what you've learned will lead to better things in the future. We hope you've enjoyed our presentation.